edition of the Fire Up series, which is a knowledge series where the investors, mentors, or entrepreneurs share some specific facets of their experiences which startups can pick on. Today's topic is going to be navigating the regulatory landscape as you tread towards customers. So there are many, especially in the fintech and maybe in spaces like medical technologies, there are a lot of regulations. And so how do you navigate through this whole regulatory landscape as you march towards the customers? This is what we're going to be discussing in the next 20-25 minutes. So, Abhinav, to get started, I'm so happy to have you here. It's always nice to talk to an alumni startup, and so pleasure. It's always I wish we have lot more of prepared alumni and students starting up. We don't have enough of it, so I have a sense of pride whenever I meet an alumni startup. So thank you for joining us, Abhinav. And while we just get started, just quickly, can you narrate your journey in the next, summarize your journey in the next couple of minutes about the idea and what is the startup about, Digio?
Sure. Thanks, Ramesh. Thanks for having me here. I'm a IIIT Hyderabad graduate. My entrepreneurial journey started with the CIE at IIIT Hyderabad when it was at early stage back in 2007-8. So the problem statement I was working upon was P2P payments on feature phones. And at that point, I kind of realized technology has evolved, but there's the way ecosystem has evolved. There are some problems to connect the things, and the major one was identity. So we were trying to solve the identity via encrypted SMS or USSD, but that it was too early for India. So that's how was my first attempt, and I have been a software engineer. I joined multiple companies. Last was Flipkart, where I was working on large scale systems for supply chain. So back in 2015, I got in touch with Mr. Nandan Nilekani, who was explaining about India Stack, how Aadhaar is going to change the ecosystem, what kind of, how the future looks like. And that point, I could connect how the India's future is going to look like, because I have kind of invested significant amount of time back in 2007-8 on this problem. So that was my starting point. And the way I was started was, I was convinced myself that this will change the ecosystem. So I Googled Nandan's email, I wrote to him, and I was not expecting a response, but he responded, and he connected me to India Stack people. So I kind of started brainstorming, and the least hanging fruit, which looked like to me, was the paper-based processes today. So if we think fundamentally why paper still exists, technology has gone so far. And the fundamental reason is there's some sort of identity involved in that paper. For example, if you're signing a paper, or there's a seal, or you're showing your ID card, all of these are proving an identity. So if the identity can go digital, the whole ecosystem can be reimagined in the digital world. So with that intent, we started back in 2015. And the first product we launched was a digital signing application. Suppose any two people, or we both have to sign some sort of document. I can upload it to Digio. I can sign myself first. I can request sign from you, and it becomes a legal agreement. You take a picture of your driving license, authenticate, and it becomes a self-attested copy. And this whole layer kept evolving as we were going deeper into the market. We had to solve KYC, because documentation solved one part of the problem. KYC is one major hurdle in the fintech ecosystem. So we had to get into this. Initially, India has seen Aadhaar eKYC as the first thing, the eKYC medium. And post that, Aadhaar regulations changed, Supreme Court guidelines changed, and now regulators have allowed video KYC and Aadhaar KYC in particular way. And there are other ways like DigiLocker, and there's a Deeptech also involved, taking pictures of ID card, performing OCR, or doing face match. So it's a combination of Deeptech plus regulatory ecosystem. So that is second vertical. And the third vertical we operate is in recurring payments. There's a layer from NPCI. It's called NACH, eNACH to be specific, and it used to be a physical form-based process earlier. And it was a big blocker in the fintech ecosystem to evolve because lending industry and banking industry significantly depends on this. And once it went digital in 2017, and that's where we played a bigger role. And around 60% of ENACH transactions of India were happening by Digio at that point. So if you plug all of these things together, I'm talking about this is currently required by any business to go digital. And the kind of user base we have banks, insurance, telco, mutual fund, real estate, education, medical, HR. So it's across the ecosystem, the kind of customer base we have. And quickly to talk about the company, we raised Zerodha invested in 2016. Post that we have been profitable.
So that's nice. I think the when you have revenue funded startups and growing, I mean that's that's like they say music to the ears of anybody in the space. So I mean revenue funded is the best way. So nice to see that you're revenue funded and growing. And like you said, I think the opportunity timing also was right as we were making this big shift into digital payments. I think being there, I think right place, right time. So that's fantastic. Now the whole space that you're in is highly regulated. Right, when it comes to payments, like I mean, I don't even know who are all the regulators. I mean, you see, RBI, there is NPCI, there is like I don't know who else, right? All kinds of there's so many regulators that come into play now. So how? I mean, when you started, I mean, you're very blissfully ignorant of all the landmines that lay ahead of you, or were you very aware and then got in knowing? Because either way, you treated it well.
Right.
But how did it happen? I mean, was there some amount of ignorance that helped you get in without scaring you, or was it? How was it?
Not really. I because I was a software engineer, like any other software engineer who has the maximum regulatory thing they deal with is filing their ITR, not more than that. So even I was at that stage, but I was fundamentally convinced that this is going to change the ecosystem. The thought process was there, and I'm kind of in belief that talk someone, and if you are able to understand what they are thinking and justify your points, they'll understand. So I was at that level, and even from the regulatory purpose, I was not sure that it's going to be regulated what I'm going to build. Then the first thing which I, after building the basic product, was having a license from for performing eSign, which was regulated by CCA, Control of Certifying Authority. So it kind of organically happened for me. I understood what kind of things they'll require, what kind of things I need to start this thing, and it incrementally kept happening. The kind of use we started getting after from financial domain, they started asking different kind of question. Is your data secure? Is your what kind of licensing do you have? Are you allowed to do this, what we are doing? So yeah, gradually it kept happening. And the good thing for us was there was iSpirit also in between, who were kind of, if we had some so rather than going to a regulator, we had somebody to talk to. Like, is what I'm doing, is it valid or not? Or if there's a gray area, whom shall I talk to? So yeah, that's how
I think iSpirit did a phenomenal job. I was very involved with iSpirit in the early days. I mean, I couldn't contribute too much time. So, but I think especially around the India stack, I think they did a great job of getting the whole ecosystem together. If not, you can't navigate. If as a startup, you have to go find your way to the right person for the right advice or decision, would have been, I mean, nightmarish. I think iSpirit did a good job of kind of making all those connections, especially easier for startups. And probably also having somebody like Nandan Nilekani there also maybe help from the government side, because that was the time when he was also there. So before we get little specifically into the financial space, I mean, in your view, now that you've been in this space, which is kind of has a lot of regulatory stipulations, what are other sectors where you think, I mean, where you're aware there are a lot of regulations that a startup needs to be aware of? And then we'll get into the fintech space.
So see, it's a contextual thing. The kind of nature of business and a startup has, it will depend on that. So if you're dealing with financial domain, you may be under RBI, or it depends on the nature of your business. So maybe you are just a distributor, or you are a kind of loan marketplace. You might not be directly under RBI, but maybe you are doing something. For example, there's a financial domain, and if you are using a tech industry, maybe eKYC or any sort of, come under a tech regulator as well, as per Indian ITX. UIDAI says something that you have to perform eKYC in particular form, you can persist the data in this particular form, and so on. So these are the basic ones now, and these are out in the public. If you are what kind of business building, certain level of regulations are out there in the public. If you are building something similar what already somebody has done, then the information is easier to get. And if you are doing something which is like drastically new to the ecosystem, and then the regulations come out, because regulators even do not know that something like this can happen. For example, a ride sharing industry, or maybe the delivery industry. So the delivery of a grocery is not equivalent to delivery of a medicine. So what kind of things you are dealing with, maybe you have to go into that particular segment and see what kind of regulation you are under into.
So, are you aware of other domains like health, medical, and such, which have other regulators?
Yeah. So the major ones are SEBI. If you are into stock exchange and securities, so capital market, then RBI. There's a IRDA. If you are dealing with insurance, then there's a PFRDA, where not many startups are there. Then there are authorities in India. For example, if you are dealing with taxation, you are building something around that. You are dealing with IT department. You are getting some license from them. For example, basic simple one. If you get a pen verification license, you come under IT department. Like there are regulations to use. You have to take some consent from the user. You cannot share the data further. So indirectly, you come under a regulator. Then the GSTN. You're building something around GST. You have a GSP license and you have a ASP license. So you come under those authorities. Similarly, for us, like we deal with eSign and all, there's a controller of certifying authority. Then there's a UIDAI who deals with Aadhaar related issue stuff. So yeah, so these are the major regulators, and the ones as you mentioned, there's a medical association where the health tech could be regulated. There's a UGC for education, and yeah. So these are the
just the number of things. Some I knew, some I didn't even know. I didn't know there was a PF regulatory authority, or even that income tax regulatory authorities. I didn't know that they existed. Others I knew. So how does one know? Like, I mean, if they're getting into a space, right? At least they may have an idea. They're probably regulated if they're in things like payments and such. Hopefully, they'll have an idea that they come under some regulatory requirements. How does one find out? I mean, like, how did you find out? I mean, what all did iSpirit help with? If not iSpirit, where would you have gone?
Right. So, see, from my understanding, I can classify the regulations in three segments. One is kind of pre-mode, where if you're trying to do something, you need a permit or you need a license. And to get there, you have to talk to a regulator. For example, you want to build a payment gateway, you want to become an NBFC, or you want to become an account aggregator, or anything like that. So for that, there are clearly defined guidelines that you have to have this license, and maybe there are now the ecosystem has evolved. You have a dependency on the centralized system. For example, you need access to CKYC, or in case of SEBI, you need access to KRA, or in case of medical association, there could public databases where the APIs are exposed. Similarly, like if you are running a transport kind of startup, from transport department, there are open databases where you can verify the driving license of RC of the person. If you need access to those kind of services, you have to have the licensing in place. So the good thing about them is you're covered over there in at least till some extent. So that is one part where it's like to do your business, you have to get a license. There are clear guidelines. The second one is the corporate governance part, where you come under company acts. You have to file taxes. You have to have like beyond the limit. You have to follow, let's say CSR, or you have to have board meetings and all. So there are defined guidelines, and there are CA, CS in the company.
So that part, you know who to go. I mean, CS, you get somebody who's worked with startups or even small companies, you know that they will understand the process. But all the other financial regulators you mentioned, who could be, I mean, is it all listed somewhere? I mean, like, I hope, I mean, when we kind of put a blog post on today's talk, I hopefully we will list some of these that you mentioned, so that will help the next fintech startup coming up. But are they listed somewhere? Where do you go find this information?
It's not clearly listed. It's just what you need. Like as a founder, if you decide this is the problem and this is the solution, your solution might need something which have a dependency on the regulator. Apart from that, the third one where the gray area is, people do not know, am I under a regulator or not now? So that is something like people have to do research about it. There's no clear answer to that.
No simple way to find it.
No simple way to find out. But the very basic, what my suggestion would be, if you're dealing with something, or maybe the product or the component you are dealing with, something that is itself is regulated, then do the study that are you regulated or not. For example, if you are dealing with food, or if you're dealing with caps, or if you're dealing with money, all these things are somehow indirectly regulated.
Certainly, so that's something that some place the studies go make an effort to find out. If they're dealing with food or medicines or health, and of course finance, these three areas, it's better to check if they come under any regulations.
Right. So these are examples in any segment. Like it could be if you're building a product to file ITR, maybe you can build via scraping income tax website, but there could be a cleaner way. If to do a clean way, you might have to income tax department. So so what you are dealing with, if itself is regulated, then do the research that what you are doing.
So I'm sorry, I'm asking it for it again, but I'm just trying to find out who could the go-to be. Would a CA be able to help CACS? They may not know the answer. They don't know what all CA does or PFRDA does. But is there a place to start? I mean, of course, the internet is there. That's one place to start. But is CACS, would they be at least be able to point to somebody that can answer?
Probably, but the corporate lawyers who deal with
taxation, so they are better ones.
Yeah, not even taxation. CACS do the taxation part, but the corporate lawyers who deal with if
all the laws,
company
regulations,
is compliant or not. If you're doing something, if you are not, maybe for example, you're onboarding a vendor or you're onboarding an employee, there are defined guidelines. You have to have some sort of agreement in place. If you're not doing that, those kind of things corporate lawyers take care of, and they can dig deep into a particular segment and figure out based on the circulars how close you are to the regulations and also that could be one start point.
So now is it, I mean, in your experience, since you have dealt with at least from what you described 3-4 different regulators in the list, maybe more, is there like some scope for asking for forgiveness if something was violated? How was your experience been? Something you say, look, honestly, I didn't know that this was. So is that an option when you miss something?
Oh, yes. So see, again, there are prescriptive regulations, something called. So if people do not know, they're kind of prescription where regulators say, do this in particular way. For example, I'll take a classic example. Yeah, you were saying something?
No. Go ahead.
Okay. So the classic example, the Aadhaar is a controversial topic in the ecosystem, right? And Aadhaar Act says if you are now based on the recent revisions, if you are taking an Aadhaar card of the person as a business, you have to blacken the first 8 digits of the Aadhaar number. Okay, so on the image, you have to perform some sort of image processing. So not many businesses know that if I'm taking a photocopy of the Aadhaar, I'm not legally allowed to save it in a raw format. So, so now what UIDAI is prescribed is you have to do this, but if they are not doing, there's some sort of penalties. So it's a debatable kind of topic. But yes, there could be penalties. It can go up to an extent of the appetite of the business, how much they can deal with. It could be monetary, it could be let's say cancellation of a particular license, and it could be a forgiven also, like amount
at
of
some level. If you know that you need the license and you got the license, at least there's going to be some clear directives that come as part of the license. You need to do this. right? You need to do these filings, you need to do these process checks,
Right.
and like,
Right.
so there at least there's some list somebody has given saying, look, as a condition for keeping this license, you need to do these things.
Right.
I think so. Any violation there is a different problem. So there you're right. They might run the risk of you losing the license because somebody has told that you need to do these things.
Right.
But if you didn't even know you needed the license, then what happens? And then somebody one fine day you realize that, look, oh shoot, I needed to get the license. Then you go to the authorities and they say, look, you've been operating for the last 2 years without a license. Then what happens?
So see, again, it depends on the regulator. It depends on the involved risk, what you have done. Is it kind of retrospective, or is it kind of just like whatever is done is done? There's no risk. But let's say if you have collected some sort of surveillance data now, in unknowingly, maybe you are monitoring somebody's transactions unknowingly. Is that even illegal now, or is it done is done? Maybe no harm was done, and just fix it, which is like that.
That is going forward, make sure it is clean.
Yeah, going forward, that's like European countries follow comply or explain kind of scenario. So in that case, they either have to comply or they have to explain why they are not complied. But in India, they're a bit strict. The model is not followed, comply or there's a penalty, or yeah, again, it's a contextual. Maybe it's,
so it really depends on which regulatory agency you're dealing. You're
right.
looking at what kind of violation, what harm has been caused, if any harm. And maybe it also depends on the person in charge at that point, in the regulator also, whoever you're talking to. It also depends on the person, like how the person will react.
Right.
So in a typical founding team, who is the one? I know if all of them are tech founders, then there's a problem, which probably was what in your case was. But typically, who in the founding team might have a flair for these things, or who should be mindful of these things?
So if the business depends a lot on the regulation, I feel at initial days it should not be completely offloaded. Think of it like what I feel is it's more like a DevOps in a team. If you are a small company, having a dedicated DevOps person can be an overkill, but having that level of assurity on the system is also required. So this is required at the founder level to do the initial research, what you are building, the regulations, what you are going to touch, are you complied that or not? At least do one level of sanity check. If the regulations are not clear, if you are getting a license or something, then at least like you're bit more comfortable. Like if you are complied, then you have some sort of assurity in mind that what I'm doing is I have a legal protection.
So at some level, we should view this as product definition. I mean, if you come under a regulated domain, and then this should also be like along with defining every other aspect of the product, this is something that needs to be defined as well. So whoever is handling the product definition, CEO or like one of the co-founders, should also have the responsibility saying, look, whatever it takes, talk to iSpirit, talk to CS, corporate lawyer, talk to whoever. But that's part of one aspect of, so they should look at this as a product definition, and one of the aspects of the product definition is the regulatory.
Right. Even
is that how you looked at it also?
Yeah, I do. And even the business model, what you're building will definitely depend on what you are allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Like we deal with data a lot. There are n number of possibilities to build a business around data, but are we allowed to do that or not? And unless I as a product definer do not know about that, I'll build a product which is maybe not regulatory allowed to do, right? So so that level of is required at the as you said, on the person who is defining the product, because maybe you keep that even agility in the mind that this might change in the future because regulations might change. So that level of clarity is required.
So before we take the few questions, before we take the questions now, so you at some level, because you're dealing with regulators, somebody using your service, at some level you are abstracting out, right? I mean, like eKYC, they use your platforms. They are at some level absolved of all eKYC regulations, because they expect your platform to take care of what they are committing to, if to their regulators, whoever they may be.
Right.
So is that a fair statement? Like if you use a service like yours, I mean, you're in that business itself, so you can't offload to somebody else.
Right.
But if somebody that's doing some online financial transactions, by using a service like you, at least they are offloading the whole regulatory requirements to you.
Yes. Indirectly, that is another value add the company like us bring in. The kind of eKYC guidelines, let's say RBI has put out, a company by itself might build it now, but it keeps changing along with time. So that is the kind of comfortness they get with apart from the technology part or the regulatory part. So yes, I am protected, and even there are companies who like when we onboard them, they get some sort of indemnity sign that if something goes wrong, it's your responsibility. So yes, to answer that, yes.
So at least if a startup, that's not the core business. In your case, this is the core business, so you can't offload. If that's not the core business, using a service that has, like you said, the indemnity that the service will provide, that look, for this eKYC purposes, we take care of it. We assure you that you will be complying with all the requirements, and we take care of changes and such. So no, that's a good point. So there are a few questions. Let's see. There's one that says, I'm working on a credit scoring app for financial inclusion of daily wages. Do I need to take any regulatory compliance?
So see, if you need some sort of data, for example, if you need maybe a bureau score, or you want to use Aadhaar for any reason, just a hypothetical example, or you are getting some sort of contract signed in digital form from the daily wages, then yes, you need to kind of see, am I complied with what I'm going to use? But as you broaden the scope and how you build your business model, then yes, there's a basic sanity check you should do at this point only, that what I'm going to do is not at risk in the future.
So does it require any RBI certification?
Could you quickly tell me once again what
the same credit scoring app that I was talking about, that Ramesh was talking about?
The daily wages, the credit scoring app for financial inclusion of daily wages. Does she need any RBI approval for what she is doing?
The app, I'm building a mobile app where the credit scoring would be done, and it's an AI platform. So would it require any RBI or any certification? Because there's a lot of data privacy that we need to maintain.
Right. So there are data protection laws now coming in the place. What I can think of from my experience right now, I cannot think that you come under a regulator as of now, but that's a reality of the ecosystem. Once your data becomes very, very huge and you start driving the ecosystem, then there will be regulations in the place. Because it could be treated as a surveillance, or it could be treated as a misuse of the kind of data you are collecting. But as now, the one I can think of is no one, unless you build a business model around what you're building.
Okay, thank you.
So Ramkumar, you had a question. Go ahead, Ramkumar.
Okay, so my question is, we are in the fintech space actually. So now, is there it's a little longer question. First part I will ask first. Is there a difference between the onboarding process? Suppose I'm a broker. Okay, I want to become a broker. I'm not yet a broker. Okay. I want to become a broker and I want to onboard a customer. Is there a difference between the ease with which I can do onboard a new customer if I'm only dealing with mutual funds or things related to BSc, NSE, versus I want to onboard a customer who wants to buy commodities in the MCX exchange, because both are regulated by SEBI.
Right.
So I was initially assuming that the documentation or the ease with which you open an account should be same, whether I'm opening a mutual fund account or whether I'm opening an MCX account.
Right.
But currently we are not a broker, so we are going through an existing broker.
Okay.
Now, who's temporarily helping us because we are a startup. So the problem we find is that opening a mutual fund account is 100% online is possible today.
Right.
But my broker tells me that MCX account cannot be opened like that. Okay. So my question is there a fundamental difference in regulation itself about opening an MCX account versus opening a mutual fund account in terms of what is expected out of an onboarding process? or this broker is not digitally ready. That is one question. Second question is, eventually I want to become a broker myself. Okay, and if I become a broker myself, where I buy and sell on behalf of my customers in the MCX exchange, what kind of can I be 100% digital without physical documents, without maybe not all maybe Aadhaar, may not be Aadhaar. I think now live video KYC is also allowed. So how can I plan and put it into business plan and my plan in terms of when I go to investors to say that I want to become a broker myself?
I think the question is clear. Yeah. So, Abhinav,
how will we deal with that if we become a broker ourselves?
Sure. I think that's a too specific question, but just in generally KYC, I think maybe you'll have some comments on that.
Right. So see, there's a fundamental difference when we invest into something and when we are trading something. So the trading, if we are doing, there are depositories involved. So there are depository guidelines which kicks in. But in case of mutual fund, it goes, the investment is in the control of the AMC. So in case of depository, they keep the securities on your behalf, and they are allowing a broker to trade on behalf of you. For example, if you are selling some stocks, that brokerage makes an API call to the depository saying that I want to pick 2 stocks of this particular business and I want to sell it on the exchange. So they are doing some sort of action on behalf of you. So there's a power of attorney clause which kicks in, and there are, as per the Indian ITX, there are clear guidelines that a power of attorney cannot be executed digitally. So that becomes a major blocker in the brokerage industry. But now the depositories have started giving access one by one. It's very early stage that even the power of attorney clause can be executed digitally. So once that happens, your even brokerage, once you get the brokerage license, your end-to-end onboarding can be done digitally. Even the brokerage you are dealing with right now, maybe you can push them to get the digital access from one of the depositories, and post that the entire process can become digital. Now, again, there are 2 things. Who is under the regulator? So either in this case, the AMC is under the regulator when you are selling a mutual fund, or you are dealing with platforms like BSE Star MF. So you perform KYC on behalf of them. So you are not under directly a regulator. You need to comply with their guidelines. Like you have to give the data in this particular format and I'll open an account for you, or I'll invest your money in this particular form. If you become an AMC by yourself, or if you become a broker by yourself, there are different kind of regulations you have to deal with. And that is not only about onboarding, it's across the life cycle of the broker. So, yeah.
I think this goes back to the other point you mentioned, Abhinav. If there's a license involved, the license stipulates everything. AMC, you need to get a license from SEBI. The SEBI license will tell what all you need to do. If there's a brokerage license that needs to be got from somewhere, the brokerage license will tell you what to do. Because so where there's a license, problem is a little bit simplified. The document may be easy or difficult, may have digital options, may not have. At least you know what to do. Somebody has told you, look, to comply, these are things you must do.
Yes. The risk is
issue comes when there's no license. How do you find out that there's a license required?
True.
Or there is a regulatory compliance
The other
required.
question that I will ask is that, assuming that I want to become a broker, from the net worth point of view and all that, I will say I comply in terms of the eligibility. I comply because it's just a 1 crore net worth requirement. So I'll say I'm eligible, but and the compliance part is do you only do the eKYC part, or is something like you can you because you are in the regulated industry and you are a kind of an provider, will you also be able to go beyond just KYC and say that all the regulatory requirements of a broker we will take care? No, this is including the customer onboarding process to end, whatever SEBI expects from a broker, you will take care, kind of is that kind of a model that you already have for people like particularly smaller companies like us who want to become a broker, for example?
I would suggest you take this separately, Ramkumar. I think it's a very specific question. Also, we've hit the 30-minute mark. We've just crossed it already. And so, I mean, Pragya, somebody can connect you to Abhinav. So please do take it. Of course, his bearings must be on his site also. But so, Abhinav, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. When I first got the reference of your profile, my first thought was like, what do we talk? Then I said, like, this is a fantastic topic. Everybody struggles if they're in the regulated space. So I said, like, let's talk about the regulatory minefield. So I think it was good. We probably touched the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you're living and breathing this. So I'm sure there's a lot more to this than we could discuss in half an hour. But at least I think we opened up some avenues saying, okay, these are some things to be aware of. And so thank you so much, Abhinav, and all the best in your journey as you continue to grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.